Hello and welcome to this week's beginner's guide. This week we'll be looking at the 4 Psynumbra Hero Skills, which can be found here on the hero screen. If I click the skill points button, you'll see all the skills that I have available to me, all the ones that are locked, and the ones that I have learned. We're going to be looking closely at the red ones today. We have this one, this one, this one, and this one. After we're done talking about that in detail, I want to talk about some of the stronger synergies that are currently in the game for this Psynumbra tech. I expect that the 2 expansions planned in 2020 will introduce new combinations, but I do feel like I know enough about this class to give some nice tips to put together a nice informative guide on the subject. And if we need to make any updates at a later date, I will put another video out that revises anything that may have changed. Alright, we are now ready to take a closer look at Sinister Course. Sinister Course is able to affect all the enemy units that are adjacent to this unit, and it reduces their damage resistance by 2 and their accuracy by 20%. Which is very good on a melee hero and pretty useless on a ranged hero. If you have a melee hero, you're going to have to get adjacent to your enemies anyways, so you might as well try and get adjacent to multiple units to make it so that they're easier to kill and their accuracy is a little bit hurt. Maybe if they're a ranged unit, it makes it harder for them to actually land their shots. Now, you don't want to put yourself in the line of fire. If your allies have to shoot over your hero and it might accidentally hit that hero, then it's not worth parking your unit in very close to them to try and lower their damage resistance. It's better just to do the damage to them safely without risking your own. So even if you are playing a melee hero, this is kind of a pass. 4 skill points is a lot, especially in the early game. Devouring Hope is only 3 skill points compared to the 4 for Sinister Course, and requires level 4, so you can't get it right away, but I would recommend you get it as soon as you get to level 4. Being able to heal 20 points is pretty big deal, especially on a hero, which typically I use to tank a lot of shots, and the Psynumbra don't have a lot of defensive capabilities, so you may have to tank a little bit more with your main hero. It's got a range 5, and there's other skills that you can use to heal up and do damage. I think if you put a mod on from this tree, Consuming Gaze, yeah, this can heal that unit as well, so you can kind of like alternate between that one and this one. This has a cooldown of 2, so you can't do it every other turn, but I believe, yeah, Devouring Hope does have a cooldown of 1, so you can't use it that one every other turn. This one doesn't deal damage, the other one does, but it can fill the enemy with despair, which I believe spawns in an ally. If you kill off that dude and you get an ally, you get this Echo of Despair, which is a pretty nice unit, and I'm pretty sure Consuming Gaze doesn't apply that. Yeah, that one deals damage, the other one can bring in a summon. So they're similar but different. Now let's move on to Sadism. We talked about everything here I wanted to talk about. Sadism is only 2 skill points. It's interesting. It starts off with something that costs more, and then this requires less skill points, and then this requires even less skill points, but is very situational. If you're fighting against enemies who can't have their morale lowered, say Indentured, Syndicate Indentured, or Mindless Machines, then this is pretty useless. It does 25 extra damage against units with low morale. I think I would pass on that unless you're going up against, I don't know, Kir'ko or the Amazon, who have a lot of units that can be affected by low morale. So yeah, that's a situational take, but mostly a pass. Anthem of Abyss, grants Dark Elevation, granting an extra bit of morale and some psi resistance to your ally units, and all enemy units gain Broken Mind, meaning you can do more psi damage. Typically I don't like using my main person to apply modifiers to people, but this goes and affects all allies in the battle and all enemy units in the battle. So this is very good in those really big late game fights when it's like 3 stacks against 4 stacks. Being able to grant your guys extra psi resistance can be very good, but it's really that extra morale that makes a big difference for your allies. Being able to do more critical hits is massive. And then yeah, Broken Mind will make it so enemies maybe miss their attacks. It applies a negative morale of 100 per stack, and you can have up to 5 of them on an enemy, so other things can apply it while you're applying it through your Anthem of Abyss. Now, before we jump into all the synergies between the different races and the Psynumbra secret tech, I did want to talk about a background that I like using, as well as the differences between the 6 types of initiates and the 6 types of malictors. I feel like I'm saying that wrong, but yeah, it's not important. Let's move on. I really like using the covert operative background because it makes it easier for you to get more operations points by having a decreased society operation research cost. You can go into this tree and get these operation points. Where is it? Yeah, operations points a lot quicker. By getting just a little bit more, you can cast Embrace the Darkness far more often. I believe you start off with 2 and this takes you to 4. And this takes you to 6, and where is he? Embrace the Darkness is here. This only costs 1 tactical point, so you can cast it twice at the very beginning, and once you've upgraded you can cast it 4 times a turn at the beginning of the game. But yeah, that will take you a couple turns to research this and the ability to cast stuff more often. The Psynumbra also come with the ability to summon in a little bit of reinforcements, and if you're using the Vanguard or the Dvar, they can also summon units. I think, yeah, we can also spawn an emergent in here, which means having more operations points for summoning in units is pretty useful too. It's not just useful for casting spells, but also for summoning in units. That is the covert operations background is useful for those 2 main reasons. Now we can go over to our initiates. I think, give me a second to spell it. I can't spell. There it is. Initiates. Just make sure we have just them up here because it's complicated enough as is. These Amazon initiates, they are special because they have the Dark Vine ability. If I compare this to this guy and the Vanguard, the Dvar and Vanguard ones are pretty basic, but the Amazon initiate has a different skill here. This one can entangle units, which will keep them in place for 2 turns, and I think it might have a different cooldown to this. This only has a cooldown of 1 turn, so you can heal up like that every turn, but these guys, they don't have that heal up ability. Instead they do damage, and they can do that a little bit less often, every few turns. Not every other turn, but 1 more turn in between. They can do that at range 7. It does 10 damage, and Devouring Hope doesn't do any damage. It is range 5, so yeah, it's pretty different. The Dark Vine ability, it only affects 1 target, so keep that in mind. A lot of entangle abilities actually affect multiple units. It can affect adjacent units, but not this one. This one's interesting because you can do damage with it, and the other ones don't have access to damage. But it's not quite as much about entangling as other skills that do entangling. Now I think we can move on to the assembly one, which has a couple things that are different. It has a little bit of arc resistance. It can reconstruct the soul, which means when this unit dies, it creates an Echo of Despair. That's the summon that we were looking at a second ago. And it can scavenge spare parts. So like a lot of assembly units, I think all of them come with this. This guy heals up a little bit after each battle, so yeah, you don't have to do as much healing at the end of your battles to kind of get everybody up to full. They'll heal themselves up nicely. His attack is the same as the Dvar guy and the Vanguard guy. I did go through this to see if their range was any different, but it looks like the Dvar and the Vanguard and the Assembly have the exact same attacks. I'm pretty sure I'm not missing anything here. They all cost the same amount of energy production to make. This Kir'ko guy has swarm shields, which makes sense because Kir'ko always come with swarm shields. They can sit next to each other to help each other out, and everything else is the exact same. Right, this guy is slightly different. He's got the same attacks, all those other things, but he has an extra thing in here. He is fueled by servitude, which makes this initiate quite a bit better than all of the other ones. By getting a little bit of extra damage per each indentured in the battle, you can hyper focus on this unit and indentured to do an insane amount of early game damage. I saw a lot of people saying you want 5 of these in a stack and 5 indentured in a stack, support them with a hero each, and then you've got like an incredibly powerful stack that or incredibly powerful combination of 2 stacks that just help each other out an insane amount without very much investment. Okay, I think we can now move on to the Malictors, which are pretty similar to these initiates. You'll see in just a second. Let me just type it up and hope I don't get anything wrong. So the Assembly Malictors, Kir'ko Malictors have similar stuff. Like this guy, he can swarm shield. He's pretty similar to the other ones, but he comes with Dark Locusts. The Syndicate one has all the same stuff except for he's fueled by servitude. So yeah, let's start with this guy. I think everything else is the exact same. Soul Seeker is really nice. Cage of Suffering is nice. Lure of the Dark is nice, but that is all the same as this guy and this guy. The only thing that I believe makes him different from the others is fueled by servitude. It works the exact same way as it does with the initiates, so maybe you want to trade out your initiates for some of these Malictors. That seems like it'd be a good call. But since it gets a benefit for each number of indentured in the battle, you could keep your initiates around and maybe create a 3rd stack with Malictors to make them both get as much out of their attacks as possible without necessarily getting rid of anyone. But hey, initiates die. That's okay. Sometimes units die. Alright, now we can look more at this guy. I don't think there's anything in here I'm missing. He's still range 7, 5, can be used once per battle, 2, and yeah, it's the exact same. Now let's check the Dvar, because I'm pretty sure it's the same situation. They don't get anything special here. No extra psi resistance, nothing, huh? And yeah, Kir'ko, they have these Dark Locusts, which, what's interesting about this is it says that it causes intense pain, and if the target dies while affected, the insects burst, dealing damage and spreading the effect filled with despair, which can bring in a summon. The Dark Locust have a little higher chance of applying than, what is it, the mind control. So basically you get this instead of a mind control ability, but you can bring in a unit like that, which is honestly pretty useful. But I like mind controlling a little bit more. I think if you can get the mind control through, it's more valuable than the Dark Locust. But it doesn't really tell you everything in here. Causing intense pain means that it's going to cause 10 psychic damage per turn. I had to go into a battle and use the Dark Locusts just to double check that was how it worked, and to see if they themselves have filled with despair on them, because I thought maybe this tooltip ran out of room for writing things in. So what happened was, when I put a thing on an enemy, it was taking 10 points of side damage. It itself was not filled with despair, so when it died, it didn't create a unit, but it sent the ability to create a unit. It sent filled with despair to an enemy unit which was close by, and that would bring in another unit. So I'm pretty sure I understand it. It can only be used once per battle. It's pretty much the exact same thing as Lure of the Dark, but with some slight altercations to it. Still range 5, so yeah. Can be used once per battle, just like this one's can be used once per battle. Now let's go over to, I think we've looked at all of them. This guy's the same as the Initiate. He's got Reconstruct the Soul, Scavenge thingy, and an extra bit of arc resistance. I think the only one left is the Amazon Malactors, which have Dark Thorns, which are like the ability that the Initiates had. I forget what it's called. I have it in my notes. Oh, I thought I did. Dark Vine, right. It had a longer cooldown, and this one, it has a cooldown of 2 compared to this guy's cooldown of 2. So the cooldown is the same on this now. It can entangle landbound units and the area around them, so it is more like the entangle ability that the Arborians have. And it's got range 7, which I believe is better than the other ones. Let's go check here. Yeah, that's only got range 5, so it's kind of like the Cage of Suffering, but it's got a slightly better range, and it can entangle a lot of units. So yeah, quite a nice ability for the Amazon. Does this one deal damage when the other one doesn't? Oh wow, yeah. Amazon are quite good at being Psynumbra, which we are about to go into. We're about to talk about all those little synergies. Psynumbra Dvar appears to be one of the less popular combinations for the Psynumbra on the forums and Reddit, because I think a lot of people have tried out Kir'ko Synergies and Syndicate Synergies and found that there is a lot of nice synergy. I know that there is synergy between the Amazon and the Assembly too, but I think people really don't like the Dvar and the Vanguard with the Psynumbra, and that's because when you look at things like the Initiates and the Malactors, there's no obvious bonus or special ability that makes them better than all the others. And that's because I think the Dvar and the Vanguard, they provide a pretty useful service. They balance out the Psynumbra's offensive capabilities. Both the Dvar and the Vanguard have a lot of defensive mods and, well, also mechanical units, which rounds out what the Psynumbra have weaknesses in. By using mechanical units, then you're invulnerable to status effects, which, you know, all the Psynumbra guys are biological or can be affected by things like that, or at least I believe all of them can. I know this guy, since he's biological, can be affected by status effects. He can also be. This one maybe not. Ethereal may actually be immune to it, but that's kind of beside the point. Oh, I can spell. Ethereal units. Yeah, I think they can still be affected by morale. So yes, that is a consideration that I think all the Psynumbra units have to take into consideration. But if you throw some robots in there, then you're no longer vulnerable to the same weaknesses. And I know that the Vanguard, they have a nice tier 1 mod which makes your units capable of taking more damage. Same with this right here. This gives your trenchers a little bit more armor, but you cannot, you can also apply some other nice things in here. I believe down the line there's just like things in here that make it so that your guys are more tanky in general. Yeah, that's a pretty nice mod to put on your units. Being able to get 2 extra armors is pretty nice, and yeah, I think combine that with the operations they have available to them, and you've got yourself a nice defensive combination, a nice, well, I guess balanced combination, because you're getting your defensiveness from the Dvar and your offensiveness from the Psynumbra. I know that both the Dvar and the Psynumbra can summon in units. You can summon in a echo, or rather a whisper of discord, to just kind of give yourself a nice scout. It can float around, but also it can deal a decent amount of damage in a fight. If you don't like having that weak psychic attack, you can get a different unit. You can get, I believe trenchers are around here somewhere. Yes, that's a little bit easier to get, so you can go that route to get trenchers. That costs 80 energy or 8 tactical operations points. This one is cheaper, costs 60 energy or 6 operations points. So if you're just trying to fill out your army quickly, maybe take that. Every once in a while you lose a unit while you're trying to expand, and you just need to drop it in quickly. So these guys have that advantage in 2 different departments. They can just summon in units to round out what they lost. If it was a psychic unit, maybe you go with the whisper. If it was a more traditional Dvar unit, you'd go with a trencher. By prospecting the sectors around you, you're going to get a lot of energy, and that will allow you to use your operations more often and to summon in units more often. So I think by having that little strong economy, you can take advantage of some of the Psynumbra's special skills that use more energy a little bit earlier in the game. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's everything I want to say on these guys in terms of just general synergies. Let's jump into the traits themselves. So incentivize is good, gives you extra morale bonus. That is going to be better with Psynumbra than it usually is. Usually I say pass, don't take that. Maybe since these guys benefit a lot from morale bonuses and morale buffs, take incentivize, usually pass. So, your call. Juggernaut, pass, I don't like that. Siege Master is really, really good. I like that one a lot, especially if your guy's going to be in charge of an army and not like the secondary hero in an army. Hardness training is okay. Sometimes it depends on who you're fighting. If they have lost status effects, maybe if you're going against Amazon, you want that. Stubborn is a pass. There's other ways to get stagger immunity. Armor is really, really good. Only really a pass if you're fighting a psychic heavy enemy, or maybe somebody who's doing entropy damage. Nitro battery is less useful with this combination than other combinations, but given how heavy the Dvar are on mechanical units, nitro battery is still really, really good. The Vanguard Synergies is another less popular combination for the Psynumbra secret tech, and I believe that's because their special units, the Vanguard special Psynumbra units, the Initiate and the Malictor, they both don't have any special abilities or skills that make them stand out from the rest, and both the Vanguard and the Dvar have a lot of mechanical units, which means that the synergies aren't very obvious right away, but I do believe that the defensive capabilities of the Vanguard pair very, very nicely with the Psynumbra. I was just taking a quick glance at the mods that you get access to as the Vanguard, and this is really, really nice on your squishy Psynumbra units that deal a massive amount of damage, because after they take a little bit of damage they can heal up and it's harder to hurt them for 2 turns. I also really like this, making it just harder for them to get hit in general and giving them an extra point of armor. And then this one right there, which is just, if you use all 3 of those mods on your units, they become a lot tankier, a lot harder to deal with. So putting them on units that just deal a lot of raw damage is pretty nice, especially if you can maybe get like some Syndicate in your space and use their whole thing that takes advantage of the having more indentured in your army thing that these initiates can get when they are indentured, or rather when they are syndicate. And on top of those mods right there, I really like this mod on some units, being able to jump your initiates and your malactors around the map is a pretty fun thing to do. Of course, you don't want to jump your malactors too close to the enemy line, but they do have a lot of nice defensive capabilities. They have a lot of shields and health. If you're dealing with somebody who's got melee focus, maybe you don't want to get too close because they're just going to bypass all of those shields. But I think getting your units closer and attempting to mind control is a valid strategy. Mind control is very nice, but you don't want to waste a malactor trying to mind control a unit, because tier 3 units are expensive to make. So, you know, try and keep that all in mind when you're using your jetpacks. Jetpacking these initiates around to get them better shots can be nice too, given how much raw damage they can do. It is nice just to give them a little bit of extra mobility. Now, before we move on to the other things, I did want to cover that Vanguard have a reinforcement spell. You can deploy an owl, which will make it so that your other units are able to do damage a little bit more easily. It's not my favorite summon. I prefer having tankier units. I think the Dvar summon, the Trencher one, which is a tier 2, is slightly better than this one, but still can be used to round out your army if you need units to to take the pressure off the other units. You can summon in an owl. It costs 40 energy and 4 priming points, which is cheaper than this one. So yeah, if you're running low on resources, maybe go for the owl. But apart from that, I think you'd probably want this. I don't think that this guy can do too much damage. I wonder if I can summon him in easily. Whispers of a Discord. I haven't looked too closely at this unit yet, so this will be interesting for us to look at together. His attack is a repeating range 7, so that's pretty powerful. I like that a lot. He's very easy to kill, but he deals a massive amount of damage. So yeah, combining him with an owl, which will make it easier for his attacks to go through, seems like a valid strategy, but you gotta be very careful with him because he's gonna die very, very quickly. And when he does, he doesn't spawn anything extra, but yeah, still pretty cool. Now we can talk about the hero skills themselves for the Vanguard. I really like Dig In. It's pretty cheap and benefits you a lot. It's not that hard to get cover. Field Medicine is a pass. I generally don't like using that. It seems like a waste of skill points when you could be using them on things that do damage instead of healing up the damage. Rallying Cry is okay, but you have to spend a whole turn on that. So yeah, ignoring morale penalties, it can be useful, but yes, I just don't think it's worth spending the points on and spending a turn on, really. Coordinated Strike is only useful if you're not using owls, and if you're using the reinforcement strategy. If you're getting lots of energy and reinforcing with your operations points, with your what they call it, strategic operations points, you're not going to need Coordinated Strike. Iron Discipline might be good if you're going up against other psychic units, but Psynumbra have other ways to give yourself some psychic resistance, so I think that's a hard pass with the Psynumbra. Military Martial Inspiration gives you extra morale, could be kind of good given how many guys can deal with morale in the Psynumbra thing. That's probably better than usual, but I don't know, it's not my favorite skill. Battle Plan is really, really nice and a potential take if you think that you might need more accuracy or damage. But once again, it takes up a whole turn, so you have to be very careful with that one. It might be a waste of skill points because, you know, sometimes at the beginning of the fight you want to do damage, not set up the ability to do more damage later. Amazon Psynumbra have a couple of unique mechanics which make them one of the more valid or viable combinations for the Psynumbra. The Biomancer, for example, can scan enemy units, lowering their resistances, making it easier for you to apply debuffs and also to mind control units, which is a pretty big part of the late game strategy for this Psynumbra. You want to be able to mind control with your Malictors as much as possible, which is going to be easier if you can lower their resistance. I believe the Kir'ko have an operation which can do that, but for the most part, you're going to need like Biomancers, or maybe to have your fight occurring where there is a hazard which lowers resistances. I believe the Psynumbra can bring in a hazard. Here it is. You can create an abysmal shroud, which would in turn make it easier for you to mind control people. So yeah, keep that all in mind when you're choosing your class. These guys are probably going to be the best at taking over enemy units. The Amazon Initiates and Malictors have special abilities, so yeah, if you make them, you're going to have Dark Thorns and Dark Vine, which deal damage, unlike a lot of the other secondary skills that go with the Initiates and these guys, which is in theme with the Psynumbra. The Psynumbra deal damage, so the fact that these guys can do a little bit more damage, I think, just adds to the synergy. It makes the Amazon class a lot more offensive versus just being about blinding and those kind of status effects, which is nice. It's a good way to kind of switch things up with the race. The Amazon can also apply Consuming Gaze to units that you typically wouldn't be able to do that with, like the Pteranodon. This tier 3 unit is like a lot of mechanical units that go in here, but because he is mounted, this can go on him. So yeah, him and the Harrier, because they are mounted units, they can get Consuming Gaze, which is a heal which deals damage, so pretty useful, but maybe not if you're trying to deal damage with your Pteranodon. I don't know. It seems kind of nice to be able to place that on that unit. I think that's everything from the notes, so we can jump into the hero skills. So, biology expert, pretty good. I don't know. Sometimes it's useless if you're not fighting people with bioresistance. Sometimes it's okay. So it's situational. I'd say probably a pass though. Regenerate is very nice. It heals biological and cyborg units, so it just can't be used on the last unit for the Psynumbra. This guy's ethereal, so yeah, you can't get that, but everybody else can, so that's a good skill. I pretty much always say take that, because you know it's good. It's very good with this combo. Visual acuity is nice, giving an extra bit of range. Being able to do damage from further away is always good. Animal discipline can be good, depends on how you build out your armies. That's, I guess, situational. War cry is not my favorite. I don't like spending a turn doing things like this. Ranger training, it's a pass, and Call of the Wild it's a take. I pretty much always say take Call of the Wild because it usually can change the course of a battle and quite significantly. Syndicate Psynumbra is arguably the strongest combination for the Psynumbra secret tech because they get access to the psionics damage channel research tree, and because of the way their special units work, the Initiates and the Malictors have a really cool ability. I think it's called Fueled. Can I spell? No, I can't. Fueled by Servitude, which makes it so that they do more damage for each indentured in the fight. And while I do like the way Kir'ko pairs with the with the Synumbra tech, they don't get an ability like this, which makes their units that much better. I just think there's enough synergy there that the developers decided that it didn't need anything extra. But to be honest, I think it does to compete with this. That's incredibly useful in the early game. Being able to do just 5 more points of extra psionic damage on a stack of initiates is incredibly useful. I know, because people have posted it multiple times in different threads. There are lots of different ways to get the most out of the indentured here, but people like that ability a lot and recommend it quite a bit. Personally, I like the ability to use the Mantra of Clarity mod and this mod right here to increase the accuracy of your attacks. By increasing the accuracy of your attacks, these guys don't have to get into range to get to do their damage. They can just stay pretty far back. They can stay at long range, the furthest range they can, to do their damage and fight from all the way back there. This guy has claws, he has a melee attack, but honestly I like keeping these guys back and relatively safe. I think pushing them too far forward is a good way to get them picked off. He only has 3 shields, so yeah, keep that all in mind when you're grabbing your mons, developing your armies. Eventually you'll get a melee unit down here, but for the most part these guys need a little boost to their accuracy, which you can get right here in a T1 tech and then a tier 2 tech. And given how many people can do psychic damage, this can go on a lot of different units, who can then in turn also make it harder for enemies to hit your units by making them their buffs do 15%, make them your units 15% more evasive. So yeah, very, very nice. Another thing I saw people talking about is if you combine your indentured with your psychic units, their arc damage that these guys do can counter the machines that the psychic units struggle with. Most machines, I don't know if I can find a stack, are a little bit weak to arc damage and resistant to psionic damage. So you want an option like this to help out with people that your psionic units struggle with. They combine really, really well against robots and then also against wildlife, because in wildlife typically only has armor and no psychic resistance. This guy has armor and no psychic resistance, so yeah, you got advantages against wildlife, against machines, and I think most biological units. Yeah, these guys would be a good one to attack with your psychic damage. The psychic damage channel can be alternated to bio or fire. If you are having trouble with robots, I believe you can switch this over, and this, where is it? Is it the fire one here? Yeah, the fire one there, to make it a little bit easier to deal with your enemies. If they have a lot of psychic resistance, it may be worth switching this over to a different damage channel. Now, I think that's all the things I had in my notes. We can jump into the hero skills themselves for the Syndicate. Keen Eye is nice if you're going to be sniping. You can run your guy forward and get a lot out of them, because the Psynumbra kind of need to fight at a range and not in melee. That sounds more useful than it usually is, but honestly I do like to pass on it. It's very expensive, so yeah, if you're going to go for it, make sure you know that it's going to cost you 6 whole skill points. Strategic Operations Support is a pass. I usually don't take that. Subterfuge is another pass. I usually don't take that. Escape Module is very nice. Just keeps your units around a little bit longer. Shield Battery makes it so that they take less damage. I would take that as usual. It's very nice and not that expensive. Backstab is probably a pass. It's going to be hard to get your hero in flanking position without putting them in serious danger. We can attempt to mind control with this unit, which, considering how many people have the ability to mind control, this could be a bit redundant, but mind control is always really nice, so I'm going to recommend it. I like mind controlling enemies. Psynumbra Kir'ko is another one of the really strong combinations for the Psynumbra secret tech, and I think that is in large part because the Kir'ko have a lot of psychic units, like the Tormented, the Harbinger, the Hidden, and the Transcendent, which can apply Psynumbra mods, and the Psynumbra units down here, like the Initiate, the Malictor, and the Herald of Oblivion, they can use the mods from the psionics research tree. That's a lot of synergy right there. I think by being able to put all those crazy damage dealing buffs on these late game units, the Harbinger becomes incredibly useful. It's useful as is by being able to give guiding presence to all the units. That increases their range by 2 and their accuracy by 25%, which, yeah, seeing as most of the Psynumbra units are ranged damage dealers, that makes them really good at killing off units. You put a Harbinger in with them and you've got an incredibly high damage dealing army that synergizes in one damage channel. Sure, somebody could go psionics resistance, or yeah, psionics could try and resist a lot of psionics damage, but at a certain point you're just dealing too much damage for them to resist effectively, and if they are doing that, you can always switch out your unit's damage profile to be flames focused or venom focused. So it's hard to counter. I think in the early game, the Kir'ko Psynumbra will struggle a bit with survivability, but if they reach the late game, there's a lot of crazy synergy between all their high damage dealing. I know that the Transcendents need a lot to try and keep them going, but if you can keep them alive and level them up, and maybe put in some nice Psyfish mods or Psynumbra mods onto them, then they can keep other units alive really easily from far away, while the other units are picking off the enemies trying to attack the Transcendents. Yeah, I think that's all I had in my notes, so we'll jump into the hero skills themselves now. We have Frenzied Assault, which is good if you're going a melee focus, which might be good for Psynumbra. To be honest, it's one of the better classes for Kir'ko to go melee focused, but I think I would pass on that. Fury of the Swarm is nice. Being able to deal more damage is always good. Selfless Sacrifice it's okay. It's pretty good, but it's something I generally pass on for my main hero. I don't really want to be taking damage on my hero if I can avoid it. Echo of a Hive Mind is great because everybody likes more shields. Shrouded Step is pretty good. It can help you keep your units alive a little bit quicker. Maybe a pass if you're trying to go damage heavy. If you're keeping your guys alive, then maybe you're dealing less damage, so who knows. I haven't really tested out this combination out myself, but I've heard good things. This is quite a good one. Biological units get plus 5 HP. Wouldn't be good on the Herald of Oblivion, but pretty good on pretty much everything else. This is great. If you want to put that on your hero instead of getting a Harbinger, that's pretty awesome. Probably worth investing in, seeing as it takes a long time to get up here in the research tree, and then you're gonna have to build the unit, so keep that in mind. Psynumbra Assembly is a pretty special case because it seems like it's a popular class with one strategy that a lot of people are talking about. The Assembly Psynumbra units, the Malictor and the Initiate, both have this Reconstruct the Soul ability, which means when they die, they return as an Echo of Despair. And if you combine that with we don't have enough Cosmite. If you combine that with the reassembly module, it will bring back a unit after you win a battle. You can throw this unit away, get it killed, and then it'll come back to you. And you can use that to bait the enemy into fights that it thinks is going to win, but because you can resurrect this really nice unit, you might actually turn out as the victor without any losses. Although that's pretty rare and pretty situational. It just has to be the perfect army for things to go that well, but it's not to be underestimated. The problem with this strategy is it's a late game strategy, and I don't think the assembly have as many early game options for just trying to stay alive and expanding. The mod that I was just showing you, reassembly, where is he? Module. That's tier 7 tech, so you gotta stay alive until that point. And another way to kind of take advantage of their whole mechanic is you can reassemble with your hero or with this reverse engineer. So although you don't have to wait until the end to make the most out of that whole strategy, that whole mechanic, the whole reconstructing the dead thing with a nice mod, you can do a little bit of that with a reverse engineer and your hero. Yeah, that's everything I had to say on the general strategies. Let's take a closer look at these skills. Assimilate is great if you have a lot of melee units, and you might need that on this hero. If you're going to be trying to keep Psynumbra units safe in your backline, you might need a melee hero to kind of draw the fire. Nanite boosters is okay, depends on who you're fighting. You probably will pass on that. Stabilizers is another thing I generally pass on. Battlefield repairs is only great if you're taking a lot of damage. Maybe if you're a melee hero, you want that. But this applies to everybody in your stack, so I guess it depends on what that stack is doing. If they're taking a lot of damage overall, then that could be okay, but usually I pass on that. Cybernetic overdrive is good because I believe all of the Psynumbra units except for the last one when you're playing the assembly are cyborgs. This guy, he is a cyborg, right? Yep, cyborg. But if I go in here and I scroll all the way over to the edge, we'll see you are still ethereal, which makes sense. Can't make a ghost into a robot, as much as I like the idea. And I think that leaves us with one more skill, right? Nope, we got Stunning Discharge. I like this, get that. Stunning Discharge can be nice. It's not that expensive, so it depends if you have skill points you want to spare. It goes really nicely on your melee heroes to give them like a oh, it's adjacent units, never mind. Yeah, it goes great on your, I thought it was a range thing for a second. This goes great on your melee units if you want to just stun some enemies. Reassemble, we were talking about this earlier. It's pretty much a must for this strategy that we were trying to implement, where you can reassemble the dead, bring them back, and have a never-ending army. Well, I mean, if you win the fights, that is, you still got to win. If you don't, then that snowball stopped in its tracks. Is that everything? I think that's everything. All right. Yeah, let's go over what I have planned for the future. So this is the second to last beginner's guide for Hero Skills and Synergies. We got one more, and after that I have some ideas that I've been toying around with, thinking about for a while. If you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Don't forget to leave a like, a comment, share this post with other people if you find it useful. I'll see you around. Have a good one.